So for a long time, I've been calling on conservatives to pay more attention to culture and the arts and all this, because I believe the arts capture what James Joyce called the uncreated conscience of a civilization. We tell stories because they contain more than we understand, more than we know, and some things that can't even be put into words. And for too long, leftists have let the culture slide. They basically, right-wingers have let the culture slide, and they let leftists distort the image of our conscience in the arts. See, the problem is, and the reason there's a point to what I'm saying that has to do with July 4th and my subject. The problem is art cannot be redeemed by politics, right? It has to be redeemed by artists. It has to be redeemed by crazy people like me. It can't be people saying, oh, art has to say this, it has to say that. It has to be artists who love liberty, who make great art. That's the way it works. The arts, as I have written somewhere else, the arts cannot be saved except by those who love them. And that is the point I want to get to, because I feel the same way about the country. And on July 4th, from some of the things I heard from the left, I thought it was perfectly reasonable to ask, do the Democrats, the second major party in this country, do they love this country? And I think we have reason to ask, and I'll tell you why. I mean, look, when you're an artist, when you write stuff, you get rejected a lot. That is part of the life you live, right? And my policy has always been, if somebody rejects something, I don't want to hear why they rejected it. I don't care why they rejected it. Because if you don't love my work, you can't criticize my work because you're not trying to make it what it is. People reject things because the work doesn't satisfy them in some way. Don't tell me about it because you don't love the work. If you buy the work and then say, you know what, this can be better and you can do it better here, or if you love it and you just say, but I've got some criticism, then I listen, because then I know you're trying to help me achieve the thing the work is trying to achieve. And I feel the same way about this country. That is why I really distrust. I mean, listen to the difference. Play Barack Obama right after his election.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
Now compare that to Martin Luther King.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
So listen to the difference between what those two men are saying. I mean, think of that you just married one of these guys, right? You married one of these guys, and you wake up after your wedding night, and he says to you, you know, I'm going to fundamentally transform you. I'm going to fundamentally transform everything you are. Then you know you've made a tremendous mistake, right? Because this guy doesn't love you. He loves his idea of you. What he really loves is himself. He loves himself and his idea of what you should be. But if you wake up the next morning and the guy says, you know, we're going to have a wonderful marriage, I love you, and I'm going to help you become what you said you want to be. That's what Martin Luther King was saying. He said, live out the meaning of your creed, enter into the fullness of your own idea of who you are. That is a man who loves his country. And he, unlike Obama, Martin Luther King had every reason to not like his country. It was a much worse place then for a guy of his skin color. Certainly not what it is today, which is a much fairer nation in that regard. Obama had never had things handed to him because he was brown. I mean, that was his whole career, was just being given things because he was brown. And yet he wanted to fundamentally transform the country. And that is my question. I think that conservatives can make mistakes when they don't want the country to change. Of course the country should change. Everything that happens changes the facts on the ground, and the country has to change to adapt to the facts on the ground. You know, things are different, attitudes change, technology changes things. A lot of people say, oh, you know, birth control ruined the country. Well, it may have ruined the country or not, but it changed everything. When a woman can take a pill and not get pregnant, that changes her life, and it changes the sexual life of people. And conservatives have to learn that some things can be adapted to, and they can be adapted to in different ways, or they have to make different arguments than they were making before because the facts have changed. But they want the country, this was Edmund Burke, basic Edmund Burke. He said, you know, respect your traditions. They are the wisdom of the dead, and you want to change within the traditions of your country, within the culture of your country. That's what Martin Luther King was saying. So CNN broadcast this poll, and they basically said, people are not as patriotic because only 42% say they're proud of their country. And really what the poll said was 75% of Republicans are very proud of their country, but only, I think it was 32%. Let's hear CNN's report and then I'll comment on it.
Is once exploding American patriotism starting to fizzle?
Would you call yourself extremely proud to be an American?
Not at the moment. Sorry.
I'm proud to be an American.
Only 47% of Americans say they're extremely proud to be an American. That's the lowest level since Gallup first asked the question 17 years ago.
Extremely proud, very proud, moderately proud,
Very
only
proud.
a little.
Very proud.
I think I could be prouder to be an American.
100% patriotic.
I would say I'm embarrassed to be an American right now.
And you're a proud citizen.
A super proud citizen.
Immigrants gave especially heartfelt answers. For instance, this naturalized citizen from India.
I used to be very proud. I would say I'm just moderately proud now. It makes me heartbroken and hopeful that I shall be extremely proud again.
Those who admit to a slide in their pride tend to blame a president who has wrapped himself in the flag.
I'd be extremely if Trump wasn't president.
It's a shame. It's disgusting. I'm going to put you in the not at all proud to be an American.
Not at all. If I had an
Not at all
opportunity, I would
proud.
get the hell out of this country. Excuse my French.
32% of Democrats told Gallup they were extremely proud, compared to 74% of Republicans. The president's patriotism never flags.
Now, I have to say, and by the way, after saying the president's patriotism never flagged, they cut to a Saturday Night Live spoof of Donald Trump making fun of him for being patriotic and for loving the flag. I think this is a little bit unfair to conflate patriotism with whether you are proud of your country at this moment. So I'm giving the Democrat voters a break here. Brit Hume, the great newsman from Fox News, he used to be the special report anchorman, absolutely great reporter, great anchorman. He tweeted this post that the Post put out a thing saying something like, why do Democrats hate America? And Brit Hume tweeted, hate may be too strong a word, but they sure don't love it. And then he got attacked on Twitter for saying that, and he took it down. And he said, you know what, you're right. I shouldn't have said that. That's not fair. Brit Hume was right to take the tweet down, because you can understand that Democrats, having lost, as they should, they might not feel proud of the country. They might not feel happy the way the country is going. That doesn't mean they don't love the country, right? They may feel it's betraying its values. Obviously, we disagree with them, but that doesn't mean they don't love the country. So this is not a question of patriotism. What to me is, so on the voters' part, on the people who vote Democratic, that I do not think that poll necessarily shows that they lack patriotism. The leadership of the Democrat Party and certain people who are thought leaders, that is a different story. Tom Perez, the guy who is the head of the DNC, right, the Democrat National Committee, he puts out the following statement for July 4th. And you got to remember, everything is context, right? July 4th is the day we are celebrating the sacrifices that people made to bring this country into being, what they called the suicide pact of the Declaration, where they set their lives and their honor at naught in order to bring this country into being. It is right and fitting and proper on that day to celebrate what this country is. It is a country, that when I was talking about the arts and the way they express the uncreated conscience, every now and again, as you reach a place, somebody has to write down what has been gathered from those arts. It has to write down what that conscience is. That's what happened with, for instance, the Ten Commandments. That's suddenly you say, oh, these are the rules we live by. That's what happened with the Declaration and the Constitution. They said, this is what Western civilization boils down to. This is what all the great arts that we've had, all the great music, all the great politicians, all the great precedent before, it boils down to this, to these documents. So that's the day we're celebrating. And here comes Tom Perez on this day, on Independence Day, with the Democrat comment. He says, nearly 2.5 centuries ago, a band of patriots gathered in Philadelphia to declare that all men are created equal. Our nation has changed dramatically since those words were first written. Generations of brave Americans have fought to expand the promise of equality for more Americans. As we celebrate our nation's independence, we recognize that America's founding promise remains out of reach for too many families. Too many members of society are still struggling to find a good-paying job. Well, first of all, that's not true. We are missing workers. It is workers we need because we have so many jobs. Why? Because Donald Trump has created an economy that is creating jobs out the wazoo. So the Tom Perez is just wrong about that, all right? He says, too many members of society are still struggling. or get the health care they need. Too many women, LGBTQ Americans, people of color, and people with disabilities still face inequality and injustice across our society. Once again, just on factual basis, untrue. What rights are women lacking? What do women not have in this country that makes them unequal to men? We know that this thing about the pay gap is a complete canard. We know it's not true. What rights do women not have in this country? I mean, that is an absurd statement. And as for gay people who do have all the rights that straight people have, doesn't mean people are going to like you. You have no right to be liked. You have no right to be approved of. You have no right to have your actions approved of. But I will say this, if the only thing we're worried about is that some people don't like gays, man, oh man, what a great country. What a great country. At least you don't have to wake up and be worried that the IRS is going to silence your right to speak. You don't have to worry anymore that the FBI is going to investigate the opposition candidate. We're living in a country where you are truly free. Here he goes on. Everywhere we look, our most fundamental values are under attack. Are they? Are our fundamental? I mean, really? I mean, the Supreme Court just said the government has no right, or said again and again, the government has no right to control our speech. I don't think our fundamental values are under attack. He says thousands of children have been separated from their parents at our southern border. Again, just factually speaking, in a country of 350 million people, that 2,000 illegal immigrants' children have been separated. I've said this before. I think they should fix that situation, but surely not a crisis, not the worst thing that's happening in the world. At our highest court, workers' rights are being taken away. Again, really? Really? Are they workers' rights? You know, I would just like to know what would happen if you joined a union and the union, you were forced to join a union, forced to give it fees, and those fees were spent on MAGA hats. I would like to know where the New York Times and Tom Perez would be standing there then. He says, everywhere we look, at our highest court, workers' rights are being taken away. Voting rights are under assault. Muslim Americans are being discriminated against. I mean, it just goes on. And I just feel like it's July 4th. I understand that the guy is out of power. He wants the Democrats to be back in power. I get it. It's politics. But really on July 4th, you can't say, you know, we love this country. Let's celebrate this country. Stephen King, the horror writer, great horror writer, outspoken hater of Donald Trump. He tweeted over the weekend, you know, over the holiday, it's July 4th, hug a friend of yours who loves Trump. Just for one day, just try to get along. And of course, they just excoriated him on Twitter. But that is, of course, where we should be on July 4th. I mean, July 4th is not exclusively for right-wingers. It's not exclusively for left-wingers. But the DNC has lost the plot of patriotism. It has lost Peter Beinart in The Atlantic, this left-wing writer, he writes, the left and right have abandoned American exceptionalism. And he talks about the fact that whereas Obama would at least say, he would ascribe the country's historical errors to misunderstanding, and he would say the country is moving forward toward greater equality. At least he would say that. This new woman, what's her first name? Ocasio-Cortez, Anastasia? Alexandria is right. Who this socialist who won the primary in Queens, New York, who is a socialist, she says she depicts American history less as an arc of progress than as a circle in which America repeats rather than rises above its past. Immigration and customs enforcement treatment of people of color, she told The Intercept, continues in American tradition. Quote, the very first immigration policy law passed in the United States was the Chinese Exclusion Act in the 1800s. And so the very bedrock of U.S. immigration policy, the very beginning of it, was a policy based on racial exclusion. And listen to what Tom Perez says about this woman.
I have 3 kids, 2 of whom are daughters. One just graduated college, one is in college, and they were both texting me about their excitement over Alexandria because she represents the future of our party. She ran a spirited campaign. I have great respect for Joe Crowley. Joe Crowley is a good Democrat. He was one of the sponsors of the Medicare for All bill. He's fought the good fight.
So she's the future of the party, and she does not love this country. You do not love this country if you think it has been. There was an article by Lila Attach-Feeney, I don't know, in a thing called Broadly, called How to Celebrate the 4th of July When America is a Constant Disappointment. And I really think that this is the way a lot on the left feel. America has always been bad. no matter who the president is or was. Since Trump's election, however, the qualities that make America particularly bad, racism, sexism, homophobia, the institutionalized manifestation of each of these, etc., have been emboldened, forcing many people to reckon with the ugly reality of their beloved USA. This is not America, I keep hearing, but the truth of the matter is that family separation, a disregard for black lives, homophobia, and every other incarnation of white male supremacy are exactly what America is made of. Now, here, my point is simply this. People like this, who cares what they say about America? If you hate it here, first of all, there's a plane leaving every 5 minutes. I mean, get on it, man. I mean, why are you sitting around? But secondly, if you don't love the place, you don't get to say. If you don't love the arts, if you sit around and say, I hate movies, no, I don't care what you have to say about movies. I don't care how you think they're going to be changed by your brilliance. They're not. You got to love the thing you want to fix. You got to love the thing you want to change. Look, I think there are changes that are going to come in America, changes that I think must come, all kinds of things, injustices that I'd like to see fixed, of course. But I love this country because of what it created out of nothing, out of 2,000 years of European bloodshed. It created an idea, it caught an idea, it captured the essence of the conscience of the West in the Declaration, in the Constitution, and it has been living closer and closer to those ideals for the last over 200 years. These people, if they hate it, I do not see how they are actually going to change anything. And this, this brings me to something else that's been really bothering me about the never Trumpers. Now, there are a lot of people who didn't vote for Donald Trump, and I thought that they made a mistake. I thought that they made a mistake in moral reasoning, that they didn't accept the hard truth that this was a binary choice, that one of these people was going to be president, and that if it wasn't Trump, it was going to be Hillary. That was a fact. Was it a nice fact? Was it a pretty fact? No. In a country where John Adams once ran against Thomas Jefferson, it was not the most pleasant thing to contemplate that Donald Trump was running against Hillary Clinton. That did not make me sleep well at night, okay? But that was the fact. That was the world we lived in. You had to make a choice. I believe that conservatives who did not vote for Donald Trump made a mistake. However, I made a mistake once. I think it was, 1962, I think it was. We make mistakes. That's not a sin. Making a mistake is not a sin in my religion. What is a sin is when you don't say, okay, that didn't really accomplish what I wanted it to accomplish. Now I'm going to start thinking about what went wrong and how I can go forward. There are people who are doing this. I mean, Ben and I had a big disagreement about this. I don't think Ben voted for Trump, and I don't even always agree with his balls and strikes attitude, because I believe what really matters is the general direction of the country. So if Donald Trump stubs his toe one day, I'm not going to sit around saying, oh, he shouldn't have stubbed his toe. I want to know, is the country going in the direction of more freedom, more constitutionality? I think it is. I really think it is. For all the talk about Donald Trump and how evil he is, I think he is moving the country more in line with its proper governance than Obama did. So I'm happy. I don't have to criticize him every day. But I get it. Ben has taken an absolutely honest approach to this. And I just feel that a man has a conscience. He acts on his conscience. He makes mistakes. And then he readjusts his ideas of reality. And that's what I feel a lot of guys are doing. Ben, Jonah Goldberg is the same way. I have utter respect for what they are doing, and I do not feel that they should be somehow assaulted. Two of my friends, who I really like, John Nolte and Kurt Schlichter, go after never Trumpers. I mean, in terms of Nolte, the next time I see Nolte, I got to talk to him about this. He sends out these tweets where he just calls them these horrible, horrible names. I don't think men of conscience like Ben and Jonah, who had real problems, and I had real problems with Trump, right? I voted for him because I thought it was a binary situation, and I've said I was wrong even in some of my criticisms of Trump, because he's been much better than I thought he was. I have no problem with being wrong on occasion. That just happens. So I just think that you've got to respect good people's conscience. I mean, this is part of it. You cannot argue with me that I or Ben or Jonah don't love this country and aren't trying to get something good for it. I will listen to anything they have to say. Now, there are other people like Bill Kristol over at the Weekly Standard, who said he would prefer the deep state to the Trump state. And he has just gone on and on. George Will, another one. I mean, I'm not saying George Will isn't a patriot. I'm just saying that listen to what he says. He now says that we should all vote Democrat.
If you now vote for Republican candidate, you are voting essentially you can't pretend there's pluralism. You're voting to affirm this man in his leadership of the party. And I believe it's important for the future, such as it might be, of the Republican Party, that they pay a terrible price for what they're doing.
Are people that you know, like Senator McConnell, are they waiting him out?
Sure. Senator McConnell says, look, I have a job to do, and I can exercise my Article 1 powers in collaboration with his exercise of the Article 2 powers to change the nature of the Article 3 institutions in the country, the federal courts. Senator McConnell rightly says often, we in the Senate are in the personnel business. It is our job and the powers of advice and consent to shape the federal government. And he proceeds to do that, knowing that the president is not his choice.
See, here's the thing. At this point, now that we know that Trump is not Hitler, now that we know that he's not even a Democrat, which was one of the things I was afraid of, that he was secretly going to be a Democrat, now that we know that he is committed to a fairly conservative agenda and is doing a pretty good job pushing some of that forward, not just the tax cuts, but the judicial appointments, the rollback of the administrative state, which I think is so important to our freedom, and even some of the confrontational attitude he's taking to our enemies and to some of our friends, which I think is working out pretty well so far. If you are telling people to vote for Democrats, I think you're more in love with your own ideas than you are with conservatism. Now, now we're not talking about love of country. I'm sure George Will loves this country. But I think when you are so in love with your own ideas, we have a right to say, are you fighting for your ideas, or are you fighting for the country? Are you fighting for the best thing going forward? I think never-Trumpers or former never-Trumpers have a real role to play in the future of conservatism. I think they have to start thinking about where they went wrong and what they can preserve of what they thought, because I do think that some intellectual conservatism got too much in its own face, got too much like people sitting around in bars having a conversation, and not enough about the people who were out of work and who were suffering and who were afraid in the middle of the country. And Trump spoke to those people when conservatives did not speak to them, when Ted Cruz somehow couldn't reach them. And I think, it's very important that people who were supporters of Ted Cruz, as I was, I think it's important for us to think about, okay, what can we preserve of our conservatism and still reach these people who are on our side and who are on America's side? So I just think like these vicious attacks against people who didn't support Trump in the election, I think are really misguided. I think it is different to be a Bill Kristol or a George Will who are so in love with their own ideas, so in love with their own pristine morality that they can't just say, okay, now we're dealing with this reality. They can't shift to reality. That's one thing. But the people who didn't vote for him in the first place, I do not think they deserve the attacks that Nolte and Kurt are unleashing on them. I think, and it's important. It's important that we understand each other's conscience. The people who love this country should have a say because they know which way it should go, and we debate it among ourselves and we'll figure it out.